Welcome back to Missouri's Legal Roundup. I'm Rebecca Brookhauser, and joining me today from our state's most vibrant city are Jason Pottenger of the Pottenger Law Firm from the beautiful Plaza area in Kansas City, and from Columbia, everyone's favorite college town, is Scott Wilson. And from the gateway to get to both of these cities is Spencer Farris in St. Louis.
Even as much as I get lost, I know it's harder to get to some places than others.
After becoming injured, it can be overwhelming to work your way through your own legal case, which is why you have to find the right attorney to walk you through this journey. Often clients can either hurt their case or actually help their case. And obviously, if a client is lying about, let's say, the extent of their injury, that can be harmful to their legal case. But what are other ways that clients can make their cases challenging?
Ooh, I've got one. So social media posts are the new thing. And every insurance adjuster and insurance company investigator and then the insurance defense attorneys are going to jump on Facebook and Instagram and whatever social media outlets they can dig up to search for the plaintiff and find those posts both before and after the injury that show the plaintiff doing things that they later told the doctors they couldn't do or in their deposition and told the defense attorney they couldn't do. So we try to tell people, look, we know we're all addicted to social media, but you've got to watch what you post and you've got to tell the truth in your deposition when it gets that far.
Scott, it's not just what they post, too. I had them pick up a client's picture where the client was standing with a grandchild, and it looked like my client is holding up with one hand this 60-pound kid. And the way it was cropped in the deposition, you can't see that somebody else is holding the baby up from underneath.
Ooh.
So
that's an excellent point. Mr. Pottenger, have you had any experiences along those lines?
Well, I've had an experience kind of similar to that in that I had a mediation on a really high dollar case in which my client had a really serious back injury, and it was really contentious to begin with. But we had a mediation, and the claims adjuster and the defense lawyer told me that they had video evidence of my client who they said showed him doing things that he said that he couldn't do. And I kept saying, well, let's see it. I mean, let me see it. Let me see it. And they were just adamant about it and how it was really going to destroy the value of the case. And in fact, they did have video that showed somebody doing things that didn't make them look they had a very serious back injury. Well, the good news is they'd spent a lot of time getting video of my client's roommate and not him. So that was really kind of fun. And the mediator told me, said he had the best time in the world showing them that, in fact, that was not there, because they were just convinced that this was going to be the thing that was going to kill the case. And they acted rather haughty and very, very conniving about it. And then when we showed it that it wasn't them, you could feel all the air go out of the room. It was pretty fun.
sure.
So a good tip for clients might be to pretend that it's Christmas all year long, because like Santa, insurance companies are always watching.
Always assume you're being videotaped. That's what I tell my clients. And what they're going to get if they manage to get it, because it seems like they always screw up the surveillance, is they're going to get video of somebody who is doing something that they say they can't do. And if in fact, it knocks the client out let's assume they're doing, say they're doing yard work and they say they can't do yard work. And then they end up having to go to bed for 2 days because it just really hurt them and it exceeded their limitations. And I always tell the clients, well, they're not going to show a video of you laying in your bed for 2 days because you did something that you didn't say you could do. They're going to show a video of you doing it. So I think you're right, Ms. Brookhauser. Always assume somebody's watching, because typically they are.
Jason, that's good advice for you anyway. If they'd had Facebook and social media back when we were in school, we'd probably be doing something different now. With the camera, cell camera's always on.
Yes, definitely. That didn't have something that didn't have a character component to it. Character or fitness component, no question.
Right.
So, so those are ways that clients can make their own case more challenging. But besides representing, let's say, a saint, how can a client help their case? Or what about a client really makes you want to help them the most?
I think there are certain stories that tug on us. Scott, you've had some of those where you know you shouldn't get involved, but you hear the client's story and you get sucked in.
Yeah, I've had a lot of those. I've had cases where the client is not a big complainer themselves and don't tell their own story. And so their story comes out by talking to their loved ones and their coworkers and people that knew them before the injury and know what they can do now. And so sometimes it cuts both ways. Sometimes you need a client to complain because they're just so stoic and don't want to complain. And then the flip side of that is sometimes clients complain too much and that doesn't show up in their medical records and that doesn't match up. But for the most part, I've been lucky and proud to represent the people that really deserve compensation for their injuries and that I'm really proud to represent.
I've gotten pulled into a few where everything about the case is something that business me should avoid, but the client's story pulls me in, how it's affected their life, how what seemed like a routine car crash or worse, a fall case that a lot of lawyers try to avoid. And the client is just such a likable person, and you can't teach somebody to be likable, although Scott and Jason have given me some tips that I don't follow very well. But being honest and being who you are, it shows.
And Spencer, you mentioned fall cases. Why do you think that? I mean, I have the same experience that you do. I just think it's awful hard to get insurance companies to take them seriously, even though you can have somebody who's really, really badly hurt as a result of them. Why do you think they're so hard? And Scott, you too.
Because of comparative fault in Missouri, if a grown-up falls, they can get some of the blame for that. And coming from an insurance adjuster's perspective, they always assume the jury's going to load up on that. I don't know about you guys. I probably tried more fall cases than anything. In fact, the last case I tried was a fall case over in your neck of the woods, Jason.
Yeah, fabulous result on that one too, if I recall.
She was a super nice lady.
Yeah, and that's my experience too, is that there's comparative fault, and they always defend them by, I always tell the clients, here's how they're going to defend them. They're going to say, we didn't do anything wrong. And if we did do something wrong, then it is more the fault of the plaintiff than it is for us, than it is our fault. And even if you think that it's partly our fault and partly the plaintiff's fault, they weren't hurt really as badly as you think they are. So I just feel like those are cases that get tried because they're not scared of them.
Yeah,
but
it's paradoxical too, right? The victim should have been paying more attention to this thing that we deny we even had out there in the first place. This problem that doesn't even exist.
Yeah, they always get you with, well, were you looking down? No. Well, why not? Were you looking down? Yes. Well, why didn't you see what you slipped on? They really put you in a trick bag on that, I found.
It's true.
Well, a legal case can be quite a lengthy battle. So from the beginning, what would you say some of your best advice would be for a client who is starting this legal journey? Obviously, it sounds like being very authentic and being honest with you who's representing them. But what are some other good guidelines for clients to keep in mind?
Well, I probably say this 100 times a month to clients. The truth only matters if we can prove it. If you're having pain and problems and you don't tell a doctor and don't go see a doctor, 12 strangers on the jury are not going to take your word for it. They're in Missouri. They're going to want to see evidence. So it doesn't matter what happened to you. The question we have to start looking at is, how do we prove it? And if you wait a long time to call a lawyer, I think it makes it harder to prove what happened or how it happened.
I
Okay.
agree.
Yeah.
So acting quickly, getting documentation on, and starting treatment early. Those sound like
And a lot
some
of
good
times-
recommendations.
A lot of times clients call, I wouldn't say too late, but it would, that Spencer said, it's always better to call sooner, even if you think they think they may not need a lawyer, or the insurance company seems to be treating them well. They paid for their car damage. They offered to pay for the medical bills. They said they're accepting liability. You know, all those things that an insurance adjuster is trained to tell a person to put them at ease, when in reality, they're trying to get medical records from their whole life to try to pick and choose from those medical records things that might not help the person's case. The insurance company's professionals investigating the case, they're getting witness statements that can go away, and the witnesses disappear. So the sooner the better.
Sounds great. Mr. Pottenger.
Well, I was just
Anything
going
to
to
add?
say, yeah, I was just going to say, to kind of add on both the things that Spencer and Scott said, is that if it's not in the as far as the insurance company, as far as their thought process goes, if it's not in the medical records, it doesn't exist. And so it's really important for people to get their treatment that they need, most importantly, so they have a good outcome, as good as outcome as possible that they can from their injuries. But the second thing is it documents your complaints and it documents their problems. Because like Spencer said, if somebody just tells you about it and didn't get any treatment and it's not in the records, not only is it hard to convince an insurance company to pay, it's hard to convince a jury to award you damages for things that aren't documented. It can be a real uphill battle. So I agree. Get treatment and get signed up with somebody as soon as you can.
So on the flip side of the earlier recommendation of keeping things off social media, perhaps having the mentality of people often say, if it's not on social media, it didn't happen. If it's not documented, it didn't happen. So kind of look at it like you do your social media and be sure.
Yeah, I always, when I first meet with somebody for the very first time, I have a handout that's basically says social media, and it's informational. It basically says stay off of it, because there's not anything good that's going to come of social media, talking about your injuries, talking about your damages. It just gives them one more place to dig and potentially dig out something that's inconsistent or that they can bend to be inconsistent. You know, like Spencer talked about them cropping a picture, which is really outrageous, to make it appear that they were doing something. I'm sure that was a fun mediation for you. Did Prickly Pete come out on that one?
We tell folks how to lock down their social media too, so just their friends can see it. But if I send that letter out 5 times in a case, I'll still find someone that is posting pictures of them making a beer run or something, you know.
Yeah.
Well, you've all shared some great guidance for things that can help people's case and things that can possibly hurt them. So as you're providing sort of an inside look into how cases work, on the simply for entertaining purposes, we think of this time of year when we think of all of the weirdos on the island of misfit toys. Would you share a bit about your weirdest client and if their behavior had a negative impact on the outcome of their case?
We had a client who, truth is always important, and I say I can fix anything but a lie. And this client had an injury that was not witnessed, so it came down to credibility and who they believed. And the client happened to have escaped from prison and was living on the lam for about 20 years and didn't understand why I told him that his credibility was going to be a problem. If he'd lied good enough to hide from the authorities for 20 years, probably wasn't going to be real believable. So that one didn't end well at all.
Scott, Jason?
I had a client, it was not necessarily a lie, but I had a client that I spent a lot of time with, kind of talking through her injuries, and she had a pretty serious back injury and ended up having to have it operated on. And, I was getting her ready for her deposition, and there's always the question about, well, what are things that you can do now and things that you can't do. And the thing that she spontaneously added to the question was that there was essentially her biggest complaint, that there was a certain intimate position that she could not achieve because of her back injury. And that was really about all she wanted to talk about. It was just surprising and not in a very good way, unfortunately.
It's on your mind, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
no doubt.
Talk about what you know.
Yeah.
So oversharing priorities can make it a little uncomfortable for everyone.
Yes, more than a little.
Mr. Wilson, anything unusual or interesting from the middle part of our state?
Some of the best cases are the ones you don't get in. And I had a younger guy call, and it sounded like a medical malpractice claim for a knee surgery he had. But when we got a little farther into the conversation, the knee surgery was 10 or 12 years ago, well beyond the statute of limitations in Missouri. And it happened in Maryland at the Army hospital. And he was really calling me because he was convinced that the military had placed a tracking device in his brain while he was knocked out for the surgery, and that he was going to try to remove it. And he wanted to go to the doctors to have that removed. And his parents told him they were taking him to a neurosurgeon, and really they took him to a psychiatrist. And I decided at that point that that's probably the best call for him, is to keep that appointment with the psychiatrist, and that I couldn't help him with a possible malpractice claim in Missouri.
Yeah. Woof.
Well, who hasn't had that experience? Well, gentlemen, thank you for joining us today and for sharing some great guidance and recommendations to help improve cases and some things to watch out for that may harm your cases. That is all the time we have today. So thank you for joining Missouri's Legal Roundup. And until next time, have a safe and happy holiday.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.